Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel, and in this video we are going to work on our understanding of properties. Properties inside Livewire is basically the feature through which you can store certain data inside your component and attach behavior based on that particular data. Now we have seen some examples of that already, but this is where we will go a little more deep into what is properties and how we can play around with the data inside our component. The first example would be this thing that we have over here, a public $title equals title. Now this is a property which allows the component to say that this is the data which is available to the component itself as this title kind of an attribute, right? This is, if you see, it's a class and this is an attribute in that. So it is accessible. That's how we did this kind of stuff. And also we saw that this is available inside the view part of the component, and hence we are able to render it. Now there are other ways of doing it. For example, if I for some time just get rid of this, handle submit is fine. Now inside the render, right now I'm creating a collection of to-dos using this collect method. But to give you some real example, I have gone ahead and created these 4 entries inside a to-dos table. I have a model called to-do. I'll just show you what stuff is there. So I have a model called to-do where the guarded property is an empty array, so I can add any particular property. Not the best way, because ideally you should have fillable and you should mention what are the properties which you feel are fillable when you create that. But yeah, for the sake of this tutorial we are doing it. I have a migration as well, which basically has a task column and an is completed Boolean column, and that's how I get that database structure. If I have to-dos in my database, I would like them to get populated so that I can render them, right? But then how do we do that? One obvious choice then is we start using the Lifecycle method, and for this one we can use the mount function. So what mount function we have seen does is it ensures that before the component is rendered, this method is called. And hence, let's just say first of all I'll define another public property called to-dos, and I would assign that as an empty array. And over here what I will do is this to-dos equals to-do. Oops, I need to get that, and I can do all, and let us do to array as well, because the type which I have assigned over here is an empty array. Now obviously this means I don't need this per se, and the to-dos will then become this to-dos. I am passing this public property through the render method to here, but come to think of it, I don't need that anymore because this will be available inside the blade. So now let's open our to-do list blade file. What do we have over here? We are doing a loop on the to-dos which should be available. So then ideally this list should get repopulated with the database entries, and I can see that is happening because I have record video on properties, which is our first one. Edit the already recorded videos, that is the second one. Research on native PHP and research on filament. By the way, filament 3 is out there and it is a fantastic how do I say, it's a package which extends the the Laravel framework in such a way that creating apps is simply a joy. It makes everything super fast for you to develop. So yeah, definitely something that you want to check out, and I am definitely going to create another series on that as well. I already have a series on filament 2 which is pretty in-depth, and yeah, if you're trying to learn that, you can definitely refer to it because a lot of the core concepts haven't changed, but the filament 3 series is coming soon as well. Okay, now let's get back to business. This is all fine. right? The only thing is, how am I getting this? Title is title. Okay, yeah. This is how it is coming over here, which is just fine. I don't need to worry about that. But as you can see, using the mount method, right, I was able to get this to work. I was able to pull the to-dos which are there in the database and show it over here. Also, we have the form submit. So why don't we do something like to do create, and if I am not wrong, that thing is text, right? Sorry, it's task. So create task, and what is going to happen is handle submit going to get fired, but this dollar title, okay, yeah, I can do that. Actually, I can do that. So this dollar, I mean, now this is a title, not dollar title. So let's try and see what happens. Checking entry. Okay. Now I need to work on the refresh and stuff like that, but definitely I can see the fifth entry coming into the database, which is checking entry. So as you can see, using the properties, I was able to get certain data. I was able to query that in the mount method, and then obviously the rest of the functionalities we had already seen, that we could tap into the submit function and use the title as the task for which was just typed in, right, and make an entry. Now the next thing that we are trying to understand over here is something called bulk assignment of properties. To explain this feature, what I have done is I have gone ahead and created a new model in our code base. The model name is to do, and it has a basic guarded equals empty array configuration over here, and there is a migration where we have the string which stores the task and basic boolean flag whether the task is complete or not. Once we have this ready, I basically went ahead and seeded a few tasks to the list, right? And with that, now what I'm trying to do is, first let's understand how the entire flow is working. So on the to-do list screen, we have this to-do list component, which is this blade file, and this blade file is calling one more component, which is Livewire's to-do item component. And if I look at the to-do item component, it's an inline component which takes the name as the parameter, or rather a prop, correct? The name is basically the to-do task string which we have, and it will display the result accordingly. What is bulk assignment? So let's say in the to-do item, we have name, we have the is complete, or because it's a database field, is complete flag, and maybe just for some reason there are multiple other flags as well, for example created at, updated at, right? So if your component has certain properties like this which needs to render them somewhere here, what happens is, a common thing to do is, let's just say, how do I get that result first of all? So in the to do thing, why don't we make that property as to do, and I will pass the actual to do in here, which basically means that I don't need the name over here, but it's actually the text. Okay, the to do item has a text and it has is complete over here. Okay, and I'll clear up everything. Now we saw that if I have a mount function in here, if I do something like to do like so, then I can probably add a code like this equals to do text, and this is complete equals to do is complete. And ideally then, if I change this to text and is complete, if things are correct, we should see change. Okay, the the name didn't come through, and let's understand why that is happening. Maybe I'll do a dump to do to array. Sorry. If I refresh, I see the task. So then, okay, my bad. It's task. Maybe I'll do refactor the thing as well, because otherwise it will only create confusion and nothing else. Task. Okay. This can continue to be to do. No harm there. So what are we saying? We're saying we have two properties. Task is complete. The mount function gets the to do, assigns the task, assigns is complete, and if I render now, I see the status as well. Correct? But if we have a lot of properties over here, it is a little difficult to, or rather boring, to assign every property out there. And Livewire solves this problem with a feature which is bulk assignment. Now, you may not see a big value of it with only two properties, but if your component has, it is rendering a model which has more than 7-8 properties, you will understand the advantage of it. What I can do is not file, but fill. There's a method allowed with this, which is the fill. And then because we have a model, we can do to do only. What do we need? We need the task, and we need is complete. Sorry, it will be a comma. This is a semicolon. So now if I refresh, can you see the data is still the same, but the assignment completely went away. And the only thing which I had to do was just say fill the model name, only these properties. Correct? So if I remove this for some reason, and then if I hit refresh, can you see the values are not present, and it handles them properly because it is not rendered anymore. So these are some of the things that you can do with bulk assignment. Now that we understand bulk assignment, it is important to understand one more concept, which is data binding. And data binding is one of the most powerful features which makes Livewire really an interesting choice to work on front end. And by that, what I mean is, if you have some experience with React or Vue, I would think you already understand what I'm talking about. But those of you who are not aware of these technologies, you haven't worked with any JavaScript framework, let me make you understand what the data binding is. So if I close the to-do item for some time, you will see that there is a label here where I'm saying the title is $title. And what I have done over here is I have done a model binding to that particular property, which basically means that whatever is the value of $title is automatically going to come in this input field, and whatever changes we are making into this input field also is going to be reflected in $title. And hence, if in any place we have been showing $title, that value will change. How does that work? So in here, as you can see, the text field shows $title, which right now is title. Let me change that so that you can understand what I'm talking about. This is my view, and in here I have title. So if I change this to empty, this also to empty, although I'm not using it, if I hit refresh, can you see it is empty? Now, unlike any JavaScript thing, if I make a change, it doesn't immediately take into effect. But what happens on handle submit? If I pause it for some time, and if I refresh, say check, and if I hit enter, can you see that the value has changed? Title is check. Why? Because on submit, it did change the value. Okay, that is where the data binding is. Now, for some reason, if you want that live tracking thing, right, which is there with Livewire 2, right, the previous version, but in 3, it is now an optional item, which is if I put an attribute live, I refresh, checking, it automatically populates the title and it also shows over here as the label. Okay, so this is how the live thing works, but again, it comes at a cost, which is any update would mean there's a network request, right? So there are pros and cons, but obviously when we have the submit function, right? What was I doing? I was doing a to-do.create and I was assigning the task property as $this title, which results in the model binding and come into picture where the moment I'm changing any value in this text field, and whenever I'm doing the submit, right? Because it's a model binding, not model binding, it's a data binding, a two-way data binding, this value is automatically populated. Okay. But then the question is, how can I also have a reset function? Well, that's simple. So for example, when I am trying to save something, not the emojis, save and reset. If I do this, I hit enter, nothing happens. Okay. But then if I come over here, can you see the save and reset entry was made? So how do I ensure that once the save is done, I visually show the user that it is being reset? Well, that's quite straightforward. What we can do is come over here, do this, reset, and the name of the property which we want to reset. And in this case, it is title, right? So hit refresh, a fresh one. I hit refresh and the title and everything is not visible anymore, but I can see the new entry, which means the reset is working properly. Now my UI is a little clunky and I'll try to add a little bit of niceties to it in the next video, so that it makes a little interesting to go through the title. But yeah, hold on a bit so that we have at least something in place for me to work with the UI. Otherwise, I'll have to explain you a lot of things. Okay, fair enough. Now, this reset property, do make a note that it will reset the title to what it was initially here and not something which was assigned during the mount process. And by that, what I mean is title equals from mount. I hit refresh, it says from mount, but then I am not from mount. If I hit enter, can you see it didn't populate this thing? What reset does is it resets the property to the initial initialization, which is this, and not something which is done on the mount. If you want to do something like assigning to mount, then instead of the reset, you will have to redefine the value. Maybe you can create a function which you are calling in the mount so that the value is assigned. But yeah, obviously reset will not give you the value which is in mount, but it will give you the value which is over here. Now, I would want you to clear certain concepts before we move further into the exploration of Livewire, which is we need to understand what are the different types of property types which Livewire support. And at this point, I think the documentation is the best place to understand this. So if you see over here in the documentation, it does say that Livewire supports the following primitive types. It supports array, string, integer, float, boolean, and null. So we have already seen that we were creating a to-do array, which is like this, right? We have seen string, integers are going to be the same. I could have done the is complete as boolean. I haven't done that, right? But yeah, we can do this. And then there are some other common types as well. For example, you can populate them. I mean, you can define them as being a collection, an eloquent collection model, if you want carbon, stringables, and stuff like that. From stringable, it is very important for you to understand that Livewire basically supports all the types which are easily converted to JSON and from JSON to the object. And if you see, it does mention that Livewire supports primitive types such as strings, integers, etc. These types can be easily converted to and from JSON, making them ideal for a properties in Livewire component, which basically means that anything which is not something which can be converted into JSON, Livewire will not support it, because you need to understand that Livewire is sending data from your front end to the back end, and from the back end it is consuming it on the front end. So anything which is non-JSON compliant will get lost, and hence things like closures, or if you have any method which is exposed, right, those kind of stuff will not be possible with a type that Livewire supports, because when you convert the object to JSON and then from JSON back to that object, right, that information will get lost because at some point it is getting converted into a string. Okay, so this is an important concept that you need to understand, and yeah, that's what I wanted to cover in this part of the video. It's already quite long, about 25 minutes of video, so we will cover a few more things about the properties in our subsequent videos, but this one is what we covered over here. And yeah, if you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.